Our guest today is Victor Lopez. He is a major political player in the San Diego scene. He is executive director of the Lincoln Club, a small business advocate. Our conversation today, in the midst of the election season, is going to be centered around politics. Very excited to have Victor on the show. Victor,
Morgan, thanks for having me, man. Happy to be here.
Absolutely. Thank you. Well, you are a native San Diegan, and I always like to start with talking about, your genesis story of who you are, right? Growing up in San Diego, how you got involved in politics, so that the audience can get to know you a little bit better.
Yeah, one of the few people in San Diego that's born and raised, actually. I'm from Chula Vista originally, and I don't know, not much to it. I think, I was born and raised there and went to high school there and went to San Diego State, graduated from there. I've actually gone back to that school, and then now I sit on their alumni board and been involved there. And I don't know, doing all this politics stuff, it happened kind of spontaneously. I was pursuing pro baseball for a long time, and then, I kind of got hurt, went to college, didn't, got cut when I tried to walk onto the San Diego State team, and then next thing I know, I just kind of was in this political route. My big sister was actually doing stuff, and then I ended up interning for mayor at the time, which was Kevin Faulkner, and realized, hey, I kind of really like the impact that we have here. And then I just never really looked back, because I was back and forth between that and baseball, and it was just really kind of like hey, I see the difference that we make here, and like I think a lot of people love what happens on the federal side, and more people are watching Fox and CNN and things like that. But when it really comes down to it, when you look at effect and impact, in terms of just turnaround time, the local government has a way bigger say on us here in not just San Diego, but just any other city than what we see on TV, really.
100%. And again, we are in the midst of an election season. Everybody is focused on the national level, right? But what the Lincoln Club is doing is focused on the local issues, right? Local races, which you're, a part of. And I always go back to this quote, right? Tip O'Neill, who was the Speaker of the House in the 1980s, said that all politics is local, right? It goes down to the local level. So our conversation today is really going to go over, what's going on here in San Diego, local politics, and break it down. But let's kind of shift gears, right? Again, you talk about everybody focused on the federal level. Why should people be focused on local politics?
For a number of reasons. When you look at things that are happening locally, I mean, you can let's talk about City of San Diego, right? They have like a sales tax right now that's going to be on the ballot in November. These different types of initiatives and policies that are on the ballot and can potentially be passed, those affect you immediately once they go into effect, right? I mean, if there's a sales tax, everyone's going to start feeling that in their wallets. If you pivot that over to let's talk about like Sandag, right? Sandag had a vehicles miles traveled tax that they're trying to implement, which would have been a 6 cent tax on every mile traveled in the county of San Diego. So if you drive a ton of miles, you do the math. If they put a tracker in your car and then you have to pay that bill at the end of the year, that's another financial impact that you are immediately feeling, right? And so people just really need to be involved, because it's not, aside from the fiscal issues, there's a lot of local things that affect us every single day. The pothole that you have driving home or driving on your way to work that seems to almost destroy your rim every single time, and say it does hurt it, there's a $2,000, $3,000 bill you have, and then you got to go to the city. Or public safety, right? You want to go walk down the street, you need local leaders that have created a strong budget and supported their local police, so you can make sure that when you call 911, someone's there to show up when something happens. Or it really just kind of varies from infrastructure to public safety to like homeless issues and things like that. It really, the local government has a very direct executive impact on that. But obviously everything, there's nuances to it. You have state and federal regulations that affect how well the local government can operate on this stuff. But you can see, it's like money. It's like cash money, right? Versus digital. You can see and feel it at the local level. With like the federal side, that's not really the case.
That you put it very well. So going up the chain, right? How does local government interact with state officials, right? And then kind of goes up to the federal level, right? Could you kind of talk about how that works?
I think a great example of this was COVID.
Okay.
Let's look back at what happened with Huntington Beach, right? And what was just kind of happening in Orange County in general, right? I mean, you had a state mandate of like closing up shop and everything's like that. And then you had different cities like Huntington Beach saying, "Hey, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to kind of do our thing and not follow the enforcement of the state." You have executive powers to an extent at the local level, but when you're looking at like a state implemented policy versus actually having to enact it at the local level, that really comes down to the officials that are there at the time and whatever decision they want to make, right? And what do they agree with their current governor or the president or something like that? So the way the relationship works is that when you're let's use San Diego for example, when businesses were being shut down and people didn't really know what to do, San Diego was looking at like a hybrid system, right? Like, okay, well, like you remember Little Italy? I mean, you could kind of go eat outside and things like that, and things weren't as harsh. But right there, that was a prime example of the county board of supervisors, and just like the county of San Diego in general, they had the executive power to shut down or keep businesses open, in sort of compliance with the state right there. And that was kind of that first dose when people started realizing, oh, my local government has an effect on what I do here locally as a business owner, as a resident here in San Diego. And that was, I think COVID was just the best example of people realizing, oh, wow, my local government has an effect on me, because it kind of varied by state, right? If you were in San Diego, it might have been a lot different than if you were in Florida or some other state out east, right? So, as much as we love to focus on the federal stuff, when you look at the state and the local, it really changes. I mean, and you can talk about a number of different issues, whether it's like gun or abortion or whatever, wherever you are in the country completely changes what you can actually do or can't do, really.
What was incredible about 2020 and after that is what we saw here in San Diego. The public just go lines, right? Masses of people go to these county board of supervisors meetings and express their discontent with the policy, right? And really put pressure on the local officials. And I think it was just a amazing synergy of the grassroots as well as the officials, right? And what was incredible to see was this connection that was happening, right? The lines were kind of drawn down, and for the first time, or I'm not going to say for the first time, but really the public was able to put pressure on the local officials.
Yeah, and it was just because in that certain situation, just for like clarity for everybody, is that the medical advice that they were getting, like the jurisdiction fell under the county board, right? So that's why when we talk about residing powers, those powers lie differently with county, city, state, federal. And so depending on what's happening at the time, whatever legal policy that's being implemented or law, there are different powers depending on the perspective of the elected officials that they can exercise or that they can't, right? And sometimes even if there's a state regulation, sometimes the local guys say, screw it, we're gonna do it our way and we're gonna take a stand. And we started seeing that not just here in California, but in other places around the country, because at the end of the day, I don't blame. Elected office is a tough gig, Morgan. Like there is no job. I've worked in City Hall. I've been in on the private side and the public, and a lot of people. Criticism is very justified for these types of roles, but at the same time, there's a lot of difficulties in these offices of what you can and can't do. And what people don't understand is that COVID. I don't blame anybody for what happened in the beginning of COVID, and no one really kind of knew what was happening. But then kind of the data started coming out, and then we some of the policies being implemented didn't really like make sense whatsoever. It's like, okay, you can go into a restaurant and put on a mask, but then take it off 5 seconds later and then like put it back on. Like it just, people kind of started saying, okay, what's happened after like 6 months, 6-8 months, when we had a better grasp and clarity on what was happening. That's when people really started kind of getting fed up and going, okay, we need to figure this out, right? Because the shutdowns and stuff like that, nobody knew what was happening. There was no, believe it or not, like there just wasn't a textbook on how to properly react to a global pandemic. And you saw the efficiencies or inefficiencies of government firsthand. And I think that's when people, after that, I just noticed a shift. I feel like people started noticing what, not just local government, but like the impact of government on their lives and what will happen when you have the right or wrong people in these seats.
Absolutely. It's very important. And, I think, again, it was a wake up call in 2020 of just how important local politics is. Um, so, want to talk again, you have worked on political races, right? What's something that people, they have a perception of politics that you could kind of debunk?
Oh, a number of issues. I think, you know, focusing here on San Diego and just what I've been seeing lately, a lot of people think that, and this is not the public's fault. There are entities and people that pay for it to be this way from different infrastructures, right? What people need to understand is that at the local level, there is almost no direct connection to what you're seeing on the federal side. We're in a presidential year where you have Kamala Harris and Donald Trump going at it for the presidency, and a lot of people like to vote based off what they're seeing at the top of the ticket. It's a classic trend we see every election, and whether when it's a gubernatorial year or a presidential year, it really affects the type of voters that are coming out. And with presidential elections, most people tend to be a little bit more informed, or in more cases, we like to say that they're just more tuned in because you're seeing it, you're feeling it. It's a hot topic, right? And so what happened? What I like to debunk is the fact that your local government officials, the policies and actions that they're able to implement with a mayoral seat, a county supervisor seat, a city council seat, those policies almost have nothing to do with what can be passed at the federal level. So when you're voting, you shouldn't be voting based off who you have at the top of the ticket for president. That whoever you're going to choose is who you're going to choose. But people need to be educated on what the actual policies are for their local government officials because they have a more direct impact on their daily lives more than a president ever will.
Good point. Good point. I mean, in this political scene, right, people say it's very polarized, right? I mean, there's less and less kind of middle of the road voters, but split ticket, right, of people that may vote for, a Republican at the top of the ticket or a Democrat right here for local, right? Like how often do you think that is actually happening, right? Do you think, in terms of just breaking down where things are, because that's, kind of what you're talking about, right? Like, hey, everyone's focused on the federal level, but maybe, is this policy, this rep, right? Maybe is not the party I'm affiliated with, but actually will provide the best policy. Do you think that's happening often?
I think maybe it's starting to happen a little bit more. And what the biggest thing I've been seeing lately is that common sense seems to have become a rare commodity all of a sudden when it comes to politics. And especially here in San Diego, I think people are longing for that. We're seeing it in polling from local and national stuff. A lot of people are not happy with the direction that this country, or specifically that this city, is going in. And split ticket voting is, I have mixed feelings about it, but at the end of the day, I think it's good that people, I don't think you should just be voting on somebody just because of party preference. What happens every election is you get like this nice voter guide if you're a registered Democrat or Republican, and it just tells you who to vote for because there's so many seats, and due to people being busy and just lack of information out there and financial funds, a lot of people don't have time to research their school board candidate, their city council candidate, right? Right now, getting people to vote is already difficult enough. So these voter guides make things easier for people. And people will just kind of see them in the mail and be like, okay, well, I guess this is what I'm going to vote for just because this is what the party I'm registered for is telling me to do. And if anything, it's actually kind of good seeing a split ticket vote, at least between federal and local stuff, because there's just very different policies and different implementations that can happen. When you're voting for somebody at the local level, that impact that they have, they could have a very different policy perspective of what wouldn't necessarily align with what a presidential candidate is saying, right? Like, again, it goes to the federal issues versus the local issues. And when you're researching candidates, you have to be able to kind of, you at the local level, you can see what's going around. Like, go outside, go walk down the street in downtown, go drive down some of the busiest roads in San Diego. Like, look at the infrastructure. Look at, do you feel safe? Is San Diego in that place it was 10, 15 years ago, or have things gotten worse? And when you're voting there, I mean, you got to be able to choose. You got your local city council candidate. Have they been in the community? What different perspective do they bring? What what policy are they pushing that's going to make your local jurisdiction different, right? Every single race is completely different. And if people take the time to be informed on these local candidates and federal stuff, yeah, I mean, the split ticket stuff is going to happen. And if anything, it might be a good thing. At least it shows that people aren't closing their eyes and just voting down the line. I mean, you need a balance on all perspectives, but I think right now people are longing for common sense, and common sense candidates seem to be the ones that are prevailing more than anything. People don't want some of these radical policies that are being pushed by either side. People want things that make sense and don't want to pay more out of their pocket and want to live happier lives. It's a very simple concept.
I agree. And, I always try to go back to the founding fathers of what they wanted in our country in terms of debate and dialogue. And, that's, things to move slowly through both houses, right? So there's deliberation, right? There's going back and forth, there's negotiation. But, do you think right now, though, and again, I agree, like just for the local populace, they want that common sense and, they want to have conversations. I think, are things divided? Yes, but things have been divided in this country before. Being here in California, there's conservatives and liberals and independents that all coincide with each other. It's really what we just see on the news. You go anywhere, right? There's going to be different political persuasions and people can still communicate, right? Still live, coexist. But on just
let me jump in right there. When we talk about the division, right?
Yes.
Between branding of the Democrat Party and Republican Party. Not only just here in San Diego, as a guy who's met execs from all these different types of national and local TV stations and stuff like that, when you look, if you get somebody and you go down the list and you take away the Democrat, you take away the Republican branding on it, and you just go issue by issue, right? I guarantee you over like 85, 90% of people would agree on the same policy issues and values overall. Now, there's a couple social issues there's a hard line in the sand, but overall, people have a lot more in common politically than they think, and it's the job of the Democrat-Republican Party to divide that as much as possible because they want to secure their base and secure the vote. It's a sad reality, but when I talk to people, unfortunately, when you're working politics, all of a sudden you're the political guy, and now everyone wants if it's a Friday night and I'm trying to go get a beer, and people see me, they haven't seen me in a while, all of a sudden I'm like their political punching bag or outlet, and they want to talk to me about my opinion on certain things or why I'm supporting certain people or whatever. And for me, it's like, hey, like we're talking about all this stuff. You and I actually have a lot more in common. This is like in the concept of somebody that thinks they disagree with me. They're like, hey, we actually have a lot more in common than you think. And it's the money and the communications that have been strategically put in front of you to make you think a certain way. But if you really take away labels, man, people have a lot more in common than you think.
Yep. And I think, if we're looking at some of the issues that are facing San Diego, right? Homelessness, safety, economic opportunities, right? I mean, we're all in line with that of how can we make San Diego the finest city, make sure it's that, right? So talking about the issues, right? We can all agree. I mean, we're just here in downtown San Diego. We see a lot of homelessness on the streets, right? We see rising costs, inflation. I mean, let's dive into some of those issues, right, that we all are in alignment with.
I mean, let's start with the hottest one with homelessness, right? I mean, you and I walked down the street right now, saw a couple of disturbing images as we walked into this office. I mean, let's just use common sense, right? Who here on earth thinks that it's right for anybody to sleep on the street? Who thinks it's right for nobody to have a roof over their head or have a warm meal to have at the end of the night, right? And not have to deal with the harsh conditions of being out in the street. I don't know anyone in my life that wants that. But what's happening with homelessness is that it's an argument between being compassionate and tough love. And when you go to the policy side, it goes to the argument of housing is the issue or is it a mental health problem? Now, personally, I think it's a mental health issue.
I do too.
It's the way I like this analogy. If I put a tiger in a cage and I put a blanket over the tiger and I can't see it, right? It doesn't mean that the tiger's not there anymore. Like, it doesn't mean that it's not dying to get out and gonna go completely berserk once I let it out of the cage, right? And I think the same applies with homelessness. If you put people in housing and they still have mental health problems and drug addictions and all this other stuff, it's not gonna fix the problem. It's not gonna make people change their ways and things like that. People need treatment. These people, a lot of these people are sick, and until you can resolve the mental health issue, you can put them in a brand new mansion. It's not gonna take care of their livelihood and take care of the way that they're gonna be living their life anymore. You have to implement real change at the core, and then but listen, everyone deserves a place to sleep. I mean, it's good that we have places that these people can at least sleep with from the shelters and things like that. But when you talk about what people in San Diego, and I think people across the country are fed up with, is that you walk down the street now, I mean, there's needles, people shooting up drugs, heroin, I mean, like, you name it. And the streets aren't safe anymore. The streets are owned by the homeless, especially here in downtown San Diego. And people, that's not right. You go to other places in other countries, that is not a normal thing. And we have become so accustomed to it. I mean, God, if I want to go to a Padre game, I got to know where exactly to park so I can just know I can have like a safe route to the ballpark. Because if I park on 17th or something like that, I'm really worried my car's gonna get broken into, or something's honestly gonna happen to me on the way back to the game. And it goes back to, okay, well, there's a tough love situation. At the same time, the government has a direct impact on being able to do different approaches with the homelessness situation, right? And so when we talk about this issue, yes, you don't want to ever just tell, you don't want a government to tell people like what to do and things like that, and tell you where to live or what kind of property you can own and everything like that. But at the same time, there's public right-of-ways, and people have a legal right to be able to walk down the street. And if you do drugs in front of a cop, you should go to jail. And right now, you can just walk down San Diego and shoot up heroin or meth right there on the street, and nothing's gonna happen to you, right? And there's different state laws and local laws that kind of handcuff, I think, law enforcement and people just trying to do the right thing when it comes to homelessness situation. But overall, you also need tough love. You got to be able to have policies that are gonna help put the homelessness people in better mental health situations and better overall life situations than the current policies being enacted right now. Because you know what? It's not compassionate to let people sit on the street and die and do drugs until they just go completely off the rails. What I think is compassionate is giving them tough love and putting them in positions for them to succeed and helping them from themselves.
Well, what I think we need to do is, again, I believe it is a mental health problem, right? That's the root cause of it, and people end up on the streets for a variety of reasons, I think, right? High percentage drugs, alcohol, and all that. But I think, and again, we have to, again, treat it holistically, but get for the ones that want help, ultimately, unfortunately, for the ones that want help, we'll get it. And then there's ones that want to, not get clean and sober and just stay on the streets. But there also has to be like a sponsorship, right? And rehabilitate them, not just off the drugs and alcohol, but back into society, right? It's, I think, very dubious to think that they can just go, in a day or in a week, right, to a functioning member of society to be able to, sign a lease for an apartment, right, to apply for a job, right? I think that there needs to be a rehabilitation back into society for a lot of these, for these people.
Yeah, I'm gonna give kind of our generations, the millennial Gen Z generation, the credit of addressing mental health. I think a lot of the times we would just with a lot of these issues, we would kind of just brush them under the rug and just kind of like, oh, okay, well, they're just, people are like this just because that's the way they are and things like that. But in reality, I mean, there's so many issues there on the mental side that need to be addressed. And when we're talking about homelessness, if you're able, when you can address the core problems of what people are dealing with, and then you give them a plan and kind of like set them up on that path to reincorporate back into society, now they have a shot. If you're just trying to do a blanket approach and kind of do short-term fixes versus long-term investment, you're gonna get short-term results, right? I mean, if you do like different quick sweeps and things like that, but then they just pop up on another street the next day, that's not doing anything. And putting them into a shelter will only get them so far. Until you treat the core problem, it's not going to fix anything. People need to be able to have the mental capacity to be able to operate. If not, everything else goes off the table. I mean, and that doesn't apply to homeless people. That applies to people in general, right? We need to be good up here before we can execute on our personal life, our businesses, or whatever the case is. I couldn't agree more.
So I don't know the exact numbers or statistics off the top of my head, but it just seems anecdotally that it's just gotten worse and worse over the last 4 years, right? From when I would go downtown to where I am now. Can we talk about some of the policies of the current mayor of why this is progressing, or put your finger on like why, in my, maybe I'm wrong, that it's gotten progressively worse over the last 4 years?
No, it 100% has. I was actually just looking at the numbers the other day. Yeah, from 2020 to 2024, when we had a change in leadership at the mayoral level, the numbers have significantly increased. And, I've done that point in time count that we do here in San Diego, where you like wake up super early and then you go around downtown and there's like a huge group of people, and you try to get like a rough estimate, a pretty rough / decent estimate of how many homeless people there are currently in San Diego. And what we're seeing is that the policies that are being implemented, they're just not really changing anything. I mean, the numbers keep increasing, and until you have a more aggressive approach from the leadership here at the top, I don't expect those numbers to start declining anytime soon. And listen, in 2020, COVID happened, so COVID did affect like a lot of cities, but the management of after those years hasn't really changed. It's just kept aggravated, and they just opened up like 1,000-bed shelter over there on Kettner, and it's great. It's great that we have these, like I said, like we have places for these people to sleep. But what kind of policies are actually gonna like change the way that these people are living, moving, and walking? Prop 36 right now, which is championed by the current district attorney here in San Diego, and pretty much all, if not most, mayors here in San Diego County, and that's a statewide initiative. That prop is going to be able to provide mental health services to people that are on the street, and it's also going to give power back to law enforcement and a couple of other things, and it's also going to address the fentanyl crisis. But like Prop 36 right now, it's a reform or a repeal on Prop 47 that originally passed, and it's just like you need to get back to a place where you commit a crime, you go to jail for it. If you're homeless and you have a mental health problem, now you're being put in a situation where you can seek treatment and then start reincorporating back into society, right, and not fall into like these bad trends. So that's kind of the hottest topic right now in terms of what's going to be on the ballot here in November. But Prop 36 has received a lot of support, and it's really kind of undoing the mess that California has inevitably put itself into the last couple of years.
So what was the contrast in policy and leadership of your former boss, Kevin Faulkner, compared to Todd Gloria?
The homelessness task force. I remember Kevin was very big on that. You can kind of, when you just look at the approach, it's really just kind of movement and aggression on the issue, right? I think it's easy for a lot of people to champion that they're going to address homelessness. In politics, it's overplayed almost, especially in the city of San Diego. Like, you're going to address homelessness, fix infrastructure, address public safety. And Kevin, when he was in office, I mean, you just saw action, man. The way he moved, the different people on his staff, he was just very involved on the scene. I mean, I know he was working a lot with Alpha Project that does a lot of good stuff here in San Diego, Father Joe's Villages. I mean, a number of groups that it felt like they were way more in on the fold on what was happening. And just look at the numbers. The homelessness situation was nowhere near what it is right now. And Kevin was the only mayor of a top 10 major U.S. city at the time where homelessness was actually decreasing. And we haven't seen that anywhere else. I mean, let's go up to LA, go up to San Francisco, go to New York, right? Those cities have already burned to the ground. And people are moving out here. And now they're moving down here to San Diego, increasing the cost of living. And when I compare what Kevin did versus what I've seen Todd Gloria, who's the current mayor now, I just look at the numbers. The numbers are increasing, and Kevin was actually starting to work the other way and start decreasing those numbers because of the policies and the different homelessness task force groups that he had implemented during his time as mayor.
So I want to talk about the election for the mayor race, but first and foremost, I think we should maybe have addressed this at the beginning of the Lincoln Club, which you're the executive director of. What is the Lincoln Club? Let's talk about what the Lincoln Club does.
Yeah, Lincoln Club been around for over 40 years. Was founded in 1983 by our late founder Alan Roycer, and the Lincoln Club is a group of pro-job, pro-economy individuals here in San Diego County that are a majority are small business owners that have created a coalition together, and we essentially look out for the business community. We do endorsements of candidates that align with common sense, pro-jobs, pro-economy values, and we do a lot of advocacy here in San Diego County. When people talk about the Lincoln Club, we're a group that not only has a great networking and a group of people that just kind of get it, but it's also a group of people that they invest into different races and support candidates, and our endorsement means something. When you want to run for office in San Diego County, we're the group that wants to make sure that these people are held accountable and are doing the right things when they're in office. It doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republican. And the media always tries to paint the Lincoln Club at this certain image, when in reality, everybody wants to come to the Lincoln Club and everyone wants to talk to us because they know that the Lincoln Club is a force to be reckoned with. There's a lot of great groups out there that do a lot of stuff, but the Lincoln Club is a one group in San Diego County that takes a stand and will stand up against these elected officials and policies that are making San Diego County a harder place to live, and we just won't let that happen.
So since you've taken over, what are the changes that you've made? I mean, you're a young guy, right? Politics is considered, people see like, the people we have running for office are, 70s, 60s. I mean, as a young guy, what's the change you've brought to the Lincoln Club?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, right, it's never, I never think it's just one person. I luckily have a great board of directors and some great mentors that have been there, done that way longer than I have, that I'm able to kind of take plays out of their playbook and implement, right? But I think some of the biggest things that we had been focused on was trying to create like more of a brand name and letting people know that we're here for them. Before, I think for a long time, the Lincoln Club was kind of considered like a downtown kind of business insiders group that are a bunch of guys involved in politics. But when I came in, I think that needed to change. I think every small business owner should be involved with a group like the Lincoln Club because you get access and influence with the people that are influencing our lives every day, and that's our local government elected officials and even some other business owners, right? I don't know anybody that is within my circle that isn't involved somewhat with their community or their politics. And honestly, as a business owner, I don't think any business owner should be doing their business in wherever they're living and not have direct access to these local officials and stuff, because if they're implementing policies or tax increases or whatever, that affects the bottom line. And people need to understand, like, the local guys will have a direct impact on our businesses. Can we stay open? Can we stay closed? Is the city going to pass something that's going to affect the parking structure and the flow of traffic of commerce into my restaurant or my store or whatever the case may be, right? The club is here for San Diegans, and when people realize what the group does and kind of the type of people that are here, which is just a bunch of common sense small business owners, people kind of run to start joining the membership. Our revenue's been at the highest it's ever been. Our membership level's been at the highest it's ever been. We just had a great annual dinner the other day with Dana White that I know I saw you there, and I think we had almost like 450, like 500 people there, largest turnout and attendance we ever had. Um, people when I meet new people that have never heard of the Lincoln Club, they'll go in and be like, "God, I wish I would have found you guys a lot earlier."
Yeah. I mean, I mean, you've done a great job with hosting amazing events and expanding the community, right? Not just to politicians, but of small business owners, right? Influential people. And you know, we've had this conversation before, is that politics, right, is more than just policy. There's a cultural aspect to it. And, you know, people want to be, you know, in the quote unquote cool kids, right? You know, you got to create like an atmosphere of things that are going on, right? Innovation, right? What forward thinking, right? What are we going to do to, you know, expand into these horizons of media, into business, right? Into, you know, how to it's a collective thing, right? And that's what politics should be. I mean, talk about Dana White. I mean, that's huge. I mean, president of the UFC. I mean, how is that? How do you get a guy like that, man?
Man, Dana White is exactly what you think he is. He's exactly as advertised. He's real. He calls it how he sees it, and he like just doesn't care when it comes to doing the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
He will do whatever it takes if he thinks it's the right decision in time. And I think we need a lot more of that. And getting to talk with a guy like Dana White, man. So I flew up with my other board member Ernesto, and we flew up to Vegas the day before the event. Actually, I had to miss my board meeting, and which I never missed before. And you know, we go up. That was the only date and time that we had to work with, and we met with Dana the day before in his office. Did the whole headquarters over at the UFC, man, like this crazy facility with all this cool memorabilia and stuff like that. And so we go into his office, and you know, we kind of just start talking about what was going on not in San Diego, but like in the country, right? And a lot of people don't understand really that Dana White has a lot more influence on our country than people think. And obviously he's been in the political scene lately, and people have known that he clearly supports Trump and things like that.
They're
It's
best
actually,
friends, right?
I guess I would say best friends,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I mean, based off how they talk about each other and like, I mean, the contact and stuff. I mean, the guy freaking FaceTimed him when he was on stage with the Lincoln Club. The first thing he does when he gets on, he's like, "Hold on, let me FaceTime you in front of 500 people."
I've heard him talk about, right, like, you know, because him and Trump go way back, right? Because it was actually Trump, right, when Dana White first bought the UFC, right, and they were just getting started, and that Trump actually let him host at the Taj Mahal.
Needed a venue,
right, and kind of, you know, poured into Dana. And Dana tells stories, right, of after he became president, right, he'd be driving, you know, the secretary would come through, he's like, "Hey, the president's on the line. He just wants to talk about the fights," like just broing out like with the president. How cool is that?
yeah. It's that's the thing. Like, and you know, his relationship with Trump is great. Just that, you know, he's being involved and doing more above than just what the UFC does, right? But not only just that, man. I mean, he is a very innovative thinker, and he even talked about at the event the power of social media and the visionary that this guy is. And this guy, he really mixes the old and new.
Yeah.
And that's why I think the UFC is thriving so much. This guy he sees the world differently. He's aggressive, and he has the right kind of people in his team that are constantly adapting to the landscape. And I mean, he took a company that was pretty much almost bankrupt and built it to this thriving sports industry, and UFC's taking over the game. And you walk and talk about it. I mean, any guy I know pretty much has some sort of affiliation or interest in the UFC. I mean, who doesn't like a fight?
100%. I think the trickle down effect, right? I mean, you know, I train Muay Thai, and I know you do jiu-jitsu, right? Like how popular and pervasive that's gotten, right? I mean, it's huge. It's huge.
I saw like a joke the other day.
Yeah.
It's like you don't want to get a fight in San Diego because of all the people all the jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai and MMA gyms that are around. Because I think San Diego might be one of those few places in the country that there's probably a lot more trained individuals than untrained. But yeah, I mean, MMA saved my life. It actually, you know, it taught me. It kind of beat the ego out of me when I was around like 19 or 20. And I mean, you just realize, I mean, what you can do to a person and what they could do to you, and just like the consequences, man. I think as a man, you you always have something to prove, like whether you want to get that nice house or get the nice car, get that good job, or just look like the tough guy that no one wants to mess with. Like as a man, like I can see why most men act the way they do in terms of trying to have that ego out and chest out and never want to look like the weak guy at a bar, right?
Yep.
But at the end of the day, man, it's MMA and fighting has taught me that it's never really worth it at the end of the day. And when you look at the consequences, man, of just what's going on, it's not worth going to the hospital. And plus, hospital bills are kind of expensive. So
100%. When we were waiting for you to come up, right, there was a guy, yelling like, "Let's start a fight," and he's like running away. And no, but for those that know how to defend themselves, that are confident and strong, right? They're the ones that don't go around picking fights, right? It's always the guys when I see that are running away,
they see red.
talking, right. Like walk softly and carry a big stick, as Teddy Roosevelt said, right? You think, if you know how to defend yourself, you know how to fight, you don't need to prove yourself, right? You know who you are, right? Internally.
As a man, it's just, but that's just what we were taught, right?
Yeah.
The movies are the big brothers of the world and dads and things like that. I mean, times have changed. And, a lot of people will say that the newer generations have gotten soft, which is decently true. But at least now, I think at least on the side of just guys right now, I think we're being a lot smarter, and I like that, like the mental health issues are kind of being addressed, because if you look at it, men tend to be more aggressive if you just kind of look at just flat out what it is. And I think I like the fact that people are starting to ask more about why are they like this and how can it be fixed, versus, oh, that's just how they are. Oh, that's just, Tommy just gets in a fight every single time. It's like, why is he always getting in a fight? Like, what is that doing for him? It's not good for him. It's not good for somebody else. And as a man, you're just taught that you have a lot to prove. But at the end of the day, I mean, you just got to do kind of the right thing and be able to put away those optics of what people might perceive of you, because it might not be quote unquote manly. I mean, it's not manly going to jail. It's not manly, going to the hospital and getting cut up and stitched up. None of that stuff is ever worth it, man. People need to be a lot nicer to each other, and men particularly need to like kind of look out for each other a little bit more, instead of kind of just trying to one up each other, because we all do it. I mean, a guy walks into a room, I like, don't lie. I mean, I think we all do it. Like, we kind of size them up, just like, oh, can I take that guy like in a fight? Like, can I, okay, I'd probably have to like do like a little like spinning heel kick or something like that. But you don't ever want it to get to that point. But I mean, we're humans though. At the end of the day, it's like, I think it's like natural instinct of just being able to like gauge your danger or safety in a room.
Yeah, it reminds me of a quote that General Mattis always used to say: "Always have a plan to kill everybody you meet." I mean, it's kind of the extreme, but kind of encapsulates, right? Like, always, head on a swivel. But I think there's a fine balance, right, of where it lies. You gotta, of course, as a man, you take on certain responsibilities, especially if you're a husband or a father, and to be a protector and be a provider, but also understand, to being overly aggressive, right, which can not serve anybody well. There's like a fine balance of being confident and assertive. I think assertive is the good middle word right there.
Well, also too, if you have, it depends on who you come up around, right? With work and different bosses and things like that, it affects the way you move. I forget like that saying, but it's like tough times, or what it's like, tough times create hard men create easier lives create soft men create hard times, something like that. It's like decently true. Whoever you came up under will kind of influence who you want to be or who you don't want to be, right? And I've had plenty of other people that I've worked for or been mentored under that have shaped me on like what I want to be and how I want to treat people. And I think like right now, like in the business world, that being like that tough guy, tough as nails, like decently unreasonable and borderline like sociopathic, is kind of like that cool business guy that, oh, he just gets it done and stuff like that. But like my philosophy is, listen, like you can be that guy if you need to be sometimes. Sometimes you have to kind of like draw a line in the sand and be kind of that asshole, honestly. But I've actually just kind of, I've liked the perspective of just kind of just being honest with people and like And also not blaming people for like the perspective they come from. I think a lot of people, communication is a widely misunderstood concept of what people think it is versus what it should be. And I've just kind of learned over time, through therapy actually, that I started doing therapy about I think a year and a half ago, and completely changed my life. But when you understand like why they come from where they come from, it's like all emotional. But then when you kind of are able to separate that, and then how you react and how you like respond can completely drive and change, a business negotiation or a personal conversation with a loved one. And what I did learn was the biggest thing that I always think about all the time is that you can't blame people for how they react emotionally, or you can't blame people for how they feel emotionally, but you can based on how they react. And so when something happens to me, right, that's stressful in work, like I never react immediately. I always have to like take it in. And before, when I was younger, kind of going up, it's like immediately I have to send this email response, or I have to go call this guy all pissed off. Like it's not going to do anything. You got to be able to chill out and kind of pivot how you're going to respond on that. And I think that has changed my life personally and on the business side too,
110%. Right? You have to meet people where they're at. Get to know them, who they are, where they come from, right? Why do they think the way that they think, right? Why are they taking this position or stand, right? I mean, just before any negotiation, right? There's perception of business people are all like tough as nails and cutthroat, but, there's also an element of just sitting down, breaking bread, getting to know that person, right? The Japanese, they don't like sign business transaction until like knowing the person for a very long time, right? That's inherent in their culture, right? The relationship aspect, as opposed to, in America, it can be just very transactional. What can you do for me now? When, where, why am I meeting with you? As opposed to, other cultures are like, hey, let's start a relationship first. Let's get to know each other, and then let's do business. I think that's spot on.
Not enough people, and whether if you're like a young entrepreneur or just anybody just trying to go up through the professional world and the business side or whatever it may be, not enough people like to invest into the relationship. And in my experience and what I've learned, the relationship is more important than anything else. I mean, if some people just want to dive right into the deal and, I give you this, you give me this, right? And it's not, when the higher you up, I believe when you go through these ranks, the higher up you go through these ranks, I think people like doing business with people that they like, right? People like doing business with their friends and things like that. There's certain people you have to kind of just be transaction, like it is what it is. But overall, especially from the people that I see that are making more money, it's because they have some seriously good relationships. I mean, I look at Dana White and the relationships that he has all over the country, right? This guy's like an international figure. Or I look at the small business guys that turned a business that was just a mom and pop shop and built it like a thriving, multi-million-dollar business. Is because they invest in relationships. And I'll tell you right now, I have to like strategically plan out certain meetings so I can build a relationship, right? Like I don't like to drink pretty much during the week at all. Say I like to drink socially with like my friends and my family, like on weekends and stuff like that. But every now and then with business, some of the best business dealings I've ever done was because we were having a cocktail together and like loosening up and kind of breaking through that little barrier. When you break through the barrier, you kind of just start to get to know somebody. Then you're starting to build a relationship, right? And if you have like an ask out on the table, a lot of times like if you just meet somebody and you're asking for something kind of big or whatever the case may be, it's not organic, and it just kind of makes it transactional. But when you can call somebody and you kind of had a good time with them or whatever, now you call them, now they're kind of like a friend. Then it goes, hey, yeah, we had a great dinner, by the way. Oh yeah, that business stuff, yeah, okay, yeah, well, let's just chat tomorrow about it, and then we'll get into the details, right? But when you can break that ice and then go into the deal, I think that's usually an optimal situation. Other jobs you can, if you're just like a straight sales job on the phone, like that's what it is. But business, and when you're seeing people and stuff like that, the relationship, man, it's everything. And it completely correlates to how politics is too, because everything is relationship based.
100%. And this conversation definitely took an interesting turn and pivot, but I'm glad we got to talk about all that. But back onto politics, right? And we talk about relationships. everybody can, sometimes thinks, oh, politics is so transactional, right? Talk about the relationship aspect of politics, right? That people don't necessarily see.
A lot of the times when if you're just like a normal citizen or a business owner, whatever the case may be, a lot of times people don't understand that their local elected officials are there to work for them, right? Their offices provide services to help them with a wide majority of their needs. And when you have a relationship with an elected official for whatever the case may be, you now have access to information and also being able to push, say you have like a project or something like that, or a different initiative that you're trying to push in the community that they have a direct vote or say on. You got to be able to you have the opportunity to inform them on what's happening, give them your take and your perspective. So when it comes to them making a decision or a final vote on something like that, they now have the input from people.
That's a good, yeah, that's a good way to think about it.
And the relationships are everything. I mean, and not just in politics, in life in general, but I've just clearly learned it through this route. I mean, the people that are there, the people that are in the scene, constantly showing face, and again, back to relationships, investing in these relationships. When something needs to get done, or they need movement on something in the city or whatever the case may be, now you have access to somebody that has that direct line or input or vote on key issues, right? If you're a big advocate for homelessness and the city has an initiative on the floor to vote on it, that relationship that you've built with that council member or something like that, and giving him your take on what you think homelessness can be, or what it should be and how it should be addressed, it weighs in on the mind of the vote now, right? And so, and there's obviously there's a difference between like lobbying and all that stuff, but overall, when you have these relationships, you now have influence that you wouldn't have had in other situations. But that's the point. The elected officials that are there to work for people, at least the right ones are, and you got to serve the public. And so when the public needs something, you should be able to call that in. And what's really cool too, sometimes, like I like the congressional example. Say you have like a passport, like visa issue or something like that, or like something that's involved with federal stuff. Your local congressional member can help you with like a lot of these issues. I mean, they have these websites and info emails and stuff like that where you can have inquiries and get help from your local congressional member. If you're like stuck in a country or other like that, you got to be, if you can call somebody that's like in the Senate or something like that, it pays dividends to have these contacts, because at the end of the day, the government was built to serve the people. And I think people kind of forget that. And because of polarization of what's happened nationally, people don't even want to deal with it. They don't even want to talk about it anymore,
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that, right? Because politics is supposed to be for the people, right? And I think there's a lot of mechanisms in place where that gets diluted, and a lot of politicians can forget about that. But that's what it's for. That's why we're the country that we are. We wanted our independence from a monarchy at the time in England. Speaking of which, right? Democracy, elections, right? We have a few key elections here in San Diego. Would love to go through that, talk about those, right? First and foremost, right? The race for San Diego mayor, right? Between Larry Turner and Todd Gloria. Let's talk about that race and what the Lincoln Club is doing.
Sure. Well, we've created, this is all public knowledge. We've created a specialized form committee, primarily form committee to support Larry Turner. There was public polls that went out, and what we've been seeing just in terms of trends. People are really upset with the direction San Diego is going in, and draw that in with the national stuff. People are upset with the direction of the country, and this, the Lincoln Club had endorsed Larry Turner. He's an independent candidate, and which obviously means he's not endorsed by either party. And so, Larry was not supposed to have a shot in a race like this. And like, if you're looking at this like as a political consultant perspective, when you're running without an endorsement from either party, those bases are very huge. But in San Diego County, it's 2-1 Democrat. And so, Todd Gloria is currently the Democrat endorsed candidate. And, when you have that base already, I mean, it's like a casino, right? The odds are already kind of in your favor. And so when you kind of go as an independent, it poses certain challenges there. And the reality is that a guy like Larry Turner, independent candidates historically have not had big success, especially in big races, right? Um, but San Diego and people that you talk to are so upset with the direction of the city and what Todd Gloria has done as mayor that he just has not performed well in the polls, and it's showing. And I mean, if people ask, well, why wouldn't you vote for Todd Gloria? If they ask me, I just say, hey, just go walk downtown, go drive on some of the major roads and look at the infrastructure, look at crime rates and public safety. I mean, just if you just look at the numbers, it has gotten to a point that San Diegans are so upset with Todd that you have a kind of like a wild card guy like Larry Turner, who actually has a real shot, and he has some really good policy stances on how he'd address this stuff. But at the end of the day, it's action. I think people want action.
Yeah, we had Larry on the show, and he talked through his policies and why he's running. And you know, what I love about him is he was a Marine for 23 years, and he's a police officer, and he has just pragmatic policies, just a pragmatic rationale of what we need to do, and he's seen it, right? Specifically the homelessness issue, and that's who we need. We need people that are coming from not just working in government, risen up through the ranks, but people that have like Larry, have served their country in the military and on the San Diego police force. And, I think he gets in there day one. It's not a, he's talked about this. It's not a vacation. It's let's get to work. It's a crisis.
Yeah. Well, you're military too, right, Morgan? So,
Yeah.
It's kind of the way we kind of in the chatter we've had around kind of the local business political community is that, I mean, they've just been running this nightmare show down here in City Hall, and it's kind of like time you call in the special forces, like go send it in the Marine, right?
Yeah.
Go get them in there and go get somebody that can get the job done, right? And I think that's what people in San Diego are waiting for. And Larry's a good guy. He's a good guy. He's not bound to any crazy special interests or anything like that. He's just a guy that saw the landscape and said, well, if no one else is going to do it, I'm going to step up. And I mean, I'm not surprised to see that from a SDPD cop and former Marine. I mean, never former, always a Marine, right?
Mm-hmm.
Never surprised to see it from a guy like that. Someone that just wants to, grab the bull by the horns and actually just do something about it, not wait. In politics, there's this, I'll never forget. There was this film I remember watching, like AP Gov or whatever. I think I was a junior or senior in high school. And it was like this old film. I think it was called like the Iron Triangle. But I remember like this congressman was saying, he goes, see, the problem in D.C. is that we have this saying. He goes, you got to save your seat before you save the world. And that whole bureaucracy of politicians trying to save their seat, I have this radical notion that, you know what, if you're not willing to make drastic change and put your reelection on the line in the hopes of bringing a greater good or a greater change, then you're not the right guy for the job. If you're constantly making policies and implementing things with your executive power, all with kind of the notion in the back of your pocket that, I think this will get me reelected. This will like keep things safe. If you're just trying to keep the status quo, you're not the right guy for the job. Or gal, right? You have to be willing to make drastic change and do things that might shake the tree a little bit if you want to see real change. Because you know what? Playing it safe and kind of just cruising along throughout your term is the last thing people need right now. And we're seeing it everywhere. People are fed up with the guys that just kind of coast through re-election and not really do anything. They don't do anything kind of good or they don't do anything kind of bad. They're just kind of there, right? People don't want that anymore. People want change. I mean, we saw that in the federal election when they elected an outsider like Trump, and people have distrust. They have distrust of the mass media, and they have distrust of politicians. And a guy like Larry Turner is not an establishment politician, right? He's a local San Diego guy that wants to see change. And that's why we're seeing the success that he's had and the response from the public. It was surprising initially, but when you get down to it, it's actually not.
110%. Yeah, got to get him in there. I think it'd be a positive change to San Diego. Next race is your former boss, Kevin Faulkner, is running for city supervisor against Tara Lawson Reamer. What are your thoughts on that race?
Yeah, there's the news has been doing a decent job of kind of covering the action there and the money spent. It's it's arguably the biggest race in here in San Diego County. You know, if Kevin Faulconer is elected into office, we'll see a change at the County Board of Supervisors in terms of the Republican Democrat majority. Now, remember, these seats are nonpartisan, so when you go to vote, it doesn't say Democrat or Republican next to your name. But a guy like Kevin, I mean, he was a former mayor of the city of San Diego. I mean, city of San Diego had lower homelessness numbers during his time as mayor, and were decreasing. The county, as we talked about earlier, has a direct impact on homelessness, on what they can do there too. It's not the same as the city of San Diego as a mayor, but when you have a county board of people that understand what they need to do, and you have a majority vote over there, Kevin Faulconer can do some real positive stuff here in San Diego County. And I know they're going to have a lot more aggressive approach on how they tackle homelessness and different tax increases that they're trying to pass here in the city of San Diego. Sandag is going to play a big role on all that stuff, on those votes, and having the right elected officials there is important too. But right now, that race is Kevin has name ID. People know who he is. People respect the work that he's done in San Diego. And what we're seeing at this race right now is that, just as we expected, and we saw this in 2020, and are just kind of, you see it all over California, is that what happens is his opponent, they'll try to make the federal trends trickle down to the local, right? You drive up the 5 North or South, and you see Kevin Faulconer with President Donald Trump there on a big billboard when you go north or south down the 5.
Yeah.
And the reason they do that is because San Diego County is a 2-to-1 Democrat registration advantage. And so because there's more Democrats, and because a lot of Democrats don't like Donald Trump, obviously, what they do is that they just get these candidates that are Republicans or even independents, and they try to paint them as far right as possible, even if that's not necessarily, even if they've never endorsed them or have never done any public affiliation with them, right? They'll take a picture like that and run with it and send it to every voter that they assume doesn't like Donald Trump, which is particularly Democrats, and just run with that. And what I've been seeing in this race, which is just so interesting to me, is that his opponent does not attack him on specific issues primarily. I mean, they do go after some of the work that he's done in San Diego County as mayor, or at City of San Diego as mayor, but they just attack him more on the fact that he's a Republican. They just use that picture. Last time I checked, when you're the mayor of San Diego and a president comes into your city, you say hi to them. Barack Obama did that with Kevin, and there's a great picture of him with Obama, and then there's a picture of him with Trump. And so they just try to spin it off as this whole thing. And even if you endorse a presidential candidate, whether you endorse a Democrat or Republican, where you're the city of San Diego mayor, that's not going to change the 98% of the work you do in San Diego. But unfortunately, voters are uninformed. So what are we going to do? What are they going to do at the political side? They're just going to jam. They're going to jam just like these like federal irrelevant policies and elected officials, and just pair them as one thing and say, hey, look, they took a picture with this person. They're a bad person. Don't vote for them. Like, it's crazy. It's crazy because when you look at the facts, Kevin Faulconer has done a phenomenal job for the city of San Diego. And when you look at what it was then versus what it was now, it's completely changed. And now he's running for the county supervisor seat. So he termed out, but now he has a chance to get back into elected office and try to bring back some of those more good policies, right? I mean, whether it's the county of San Diego or the city of San Diego, I think the glory days are past, and the Gloria days have done their damage, and it's time for a change, not just there in the city, but also at the county. And Kevin has a really good shot at winning this race, and people know who he is. As much as they try to paint him as one thing or whatever, I mean, that district, people remember who the city of San Diego mayor was because they remember the work that Kevin does, and we need more of that at the county supervisorial level.
Yeah. And I love the point that you brought up, right? Because Kevin Faulconer, the mayor of a major city in America, right, worked with Obama, worked with Donald Trump, and that's what you're going to do, right? And just here recently, I mean, what's going on in Florida, Georgia with hurricanes, right? DeSantis and Biden have been meeting, right? Obviously have not said very nice things about each other in the public, but in times of emergency, right, they have to work together, right? Ron DeSantis, as the governor of Florida, has to work with, you know, DC for FEMA aid, and Biden's on the ground there, and you see them together. And yeah, there's the political side of things, but you know, they're going to go back and forth. But there's also just, in this case, a life and death of what's good, you know, what's good for the city, what we have to get done, you know. And you know, do you want, regardless if it's, you know, Biden, Trump, Obama, you want your mayor, right? Is he just going to shut the door and like, nope, we're not even going to talk to that person?
You're not gonna talk to
Yeah,
a president of the
yeah,
most powerful country in the entire world. I mean,
right.
it's just people just love to brand it as one thing, and it's just so far from it. And once you get past the election stuff, exactly what you said, you have to be able to work with these people at the Lincoln Club. At the end of the day, we're just business owners that want to see a greater good. I mean, we don't care what the party affiliation is. We care about, are you doing the right thing for San Diego County? Are you doing the right thing for your state or your country? The concept is very simple, but due to branding, it has polarized people to think in a certain way. But you know what? You know, I personally take pride in the fact that I talk to everybody here in San Diego County, and I can pretty much call up anybody on whatever issue, because at the end of the day, yeah, there might be some philosophical or fundamental differences on policy and things like that, but you got to be able to work together. You have to. That whole die on a hill party politics stuff is just so old and outplayed and doesn't get anything done, right? And when you look at what happened with Kevin, why wouldn't the mayor of a major city meet with their president coming into town? I just don't understand that. And actually, with that picture of Kevin with Trump, the reason he was there in the White House that people don't know or just forgot was that he was there seeking federal funding to address the Tijuana River issue that has been polluting our oceans and like getting people sick for decades now. I wrote my whole senior thesis on this back when I was at San Diego State, and the issue is still not resolved. People just kind of turn away and don't really look at Imperial Beach and what's going down there. And I've surfed those waves and I've gotten sick. It also builds like a crazy good immune system, is my local San Diegan belief. But that picture of Kevin with Trump, he was there getting federal funding and was there doing the good work for the city of San Diego. But hey, you know, his opponent Tara just wants to send it to people and say that he's like some crazy Trump Republican when Kevin was just doing his job, and he did his job there of meeting with President Trump. He did his job when he was meeting with President Obama, and I would have done the same. I would have met with whoever I need to at the time that's in office to get what I need done for the city of San Diego. It's a hands down no question, but due to lack of information, people don't know that.
Amen. Let's talk about Congress. So Matt Gunderson versus Mike Levin.
That's an interesting one.
That's a swing district. So it's been held by Republicans in the past, currently held by Democrat Mike Levin. What do you think about that race?
Matt Gunderson kind of really just came out under the rug. I mean, he came out strong with his campaign and was hitting on issues. And Matt's a pro-choice Republican.
Okay.
And so pro-choice is one of the main issues, if not like the biggest issue, of why I believe Democrats, you know, wouldn't vote for Republicans, especially women, right? I mean, having the right to or having women's rights is a very big policy issue that I think a lot of women look for in general. And the Democrat side, when you have that, it kind of neutralizes a lot of all the other stuff that from Republican Party branding that suffers. And Matt, because he's a pro-choice Republican, he's starting to get a lot more support from people all across the aisles, right? He's got Republican-based, independent, and he's starting to get those moderate Democrats and maybe some of those single issue abortion issue voters. And he's just done a great job with his ads. I mean, he's in TV everywhere. I can't go to a bar or a restaurant without seeing a Matt Gunderson ad. And unfortunately, for the district, that Mike Levin just hasn't done anything. We talk about, he's just kind of cruising along and been in office and seeking the reelection of the 2-year terms there in Congress. And when you with Congress, you can tie this to the national stuff because they are federal races. People don't like the direction of the country. Again, Matt is coming in. He has not been elected into office before. He was a business owner. He understands fiscal responsibility and what inflation is doing to everybody here across the country. And he's going to do a good job if he's elected into Congress to help pull back some of these crazy California policies that have just handicapped everybody here financially.
Got any final parting thoughts on the general election?
Overall, a lot can still happen between now and November 5th. People are voting early, but the numbers I've been seeing, people haven't really been voting in high numbers as we expected. I think a lot of people are kind of still waiting for the show a little bit on the federal side, which kind of makes people hold on to their ballot a little bit more. But what we see on TV, on CNN and Fox and the federal stuff is very different to what we're seeing here at the local size, particularly here in San Diego County. And so I always encourage people to do your research and investigations on all these candidates. And believe it or not, your local mayor, your local council member, your local school board members, they have a very direct impact on what your daily life is going to look like, more than the federal side ever will. And so, we all get that mail and we all see those TV ads and stuff like that. Look at who pays for those ads. Look at what interest is involved there, right? I mean, you need special interest to drive the ball for these races and stuff like that. But look at what's being pushed out there and look at what the candidates are pushing. Look at their actual policy issues versus seeing a picture of them with a certain elected official and being branded as Democrat or Republican. We have to be able to look past the branding of the parties and have to be able to look at the individuals. And the minute we start doing that, we start having well-informed, common sense individuals that I think everybody needs, not here in the city, but the country.
Well said. There's actually one more race I want to talk about. I just remembered,
Yeah.
and that's between two Republicans.
Okay.
For Assembly District, Carl DeMaio and Andrew Hayes. Right, two Republicans running in the general. So California has what's called a jungle primary system, top two vote getters, and in this case, it was two Republicans. So what do you think about that one?
I know they're both duking it out. They're spending a lot of money in that race. I know both guys, both good guys. They're gonna. I think whoever. It's really just gonna be kind of the capture of like the independent and the Democrat vote, and so whoever. At the end of the day, money, right? Money talks and it influences the amount of communications you can put out. Money in politics is very important because you need to spend that money on communications, or whether it's mail, TV, digital, or whatever the case may be. Donations and being able to have a good financial base is going to dictate whether or not you can communicate to as many voters. It's really just trying to beat the other candidate to the punch and sell what you're pushing, so in order that they'll vote for you. And it's a highly contentious race, and at the end of the day, I think East County will probably be in good hands. I know both of those guys, and I know that the work that they've done. So I'm optimistic that that district will be taken care of. But we'll just have to see what happens in November. Whoever can spend the most money, and the more wiser money will probably see a win in November. But anything can happen. We do a lot of polls and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, no one has a crystal ball. But we try to read into the data as much as we can and see what will happen there. So that'll be, and anything can happen.
I want to wrap up here. So why should somebody join the Lincoln Club?
If you just believe in common sense and you believe in the ability of small business to drive an economy forward, and more importantly, if you want to be part of a group that not only walks the walks, but talks the talk as well, then you should join the Lincoln Club, because the action and influence that we provide is noted all across San Diego County. And we don't care what party affiliation you are, we will hold you accountable if you're elected into office, because we believe that San Diego County needs to stay the best that it can be. And the only way that's going to happen is by having the right people into these offices and representing the interests of small business. Small business drives the economy forward, and without it, we wouldn't be where we are today. And so we have to do better, and we are doing better, and we're providing real action behind it. And so people see that with the club, and that's why I've been proud to be there all these years. And just November's going to happen, and they'll see the influence of the Lincoln Club. So you want to be a part of a group that makes it happen and gets things done, join the club.
Thank you, Victor. Thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks, Morgan. Always a pleasure.
All right.